Welcome to the Healthy Heart Show, where we pull back the curtain on conventional medicine and dive into the root causes of cardiovascular health. If you are concerned about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart attacks, stroke, or atrial fibrillation, this is the place for you. We will provide natural heart information that will help you prevent, treat, and reverse any ailment, leaving pills and procedures out of the picture. Here are your guides to holistic heart health, board-certified cardiologist and Amazon best-selling author, Dr. Jack Wolfson, and natural heart doctor, naturopathic physician, Dr. Lauren Latanza.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson, cardiologist with the Healthy Heart Show and Natural Heart Doctor. And welcome to another episode where we bring the best guests in the world to give you the best in natural heart health information. Our goal here is to 100 your heart and to get people off of pharmaceuticals and away from dangerous procedures. As you know, there's a time and a place for modern emergency and trauma medicine, but for prevention, it's all about how to do it naturally. And today I'm very excited to bring to you the founder and inventor of a unique technology called BrainTap. And I'll let him dive into exactly, what that is. He was introduced to me, and his company was introduced to me by a really good friend of mine, just a brilliant doctor, Dr. Tom Lankering. Give him a little credit. And from there, I want to introduce you to Dr. Patrick Porter. He's an award-winning author, speaker, and the founder of BrainTap, the leader in technology-enhanced meditation. Dr. Porter pioneered the use of brainwave entrainment to improve clarity, sleep, and energy, and remains at the forefront of scientific research. He founded BrainTap with the goal of making this technology accessible to everyone, and I think you'll find out that it is. BrainTap offers over 1,000 original audio sessions in 12 languages and serves a worldwide user base with its mobile app, which again is super easy to use, and then of course, their high-tech headset that Dr. Porter will be telling you about. Dr. Porter has been featured all over mainstream media and certainly as an expert in brain health and wellness. And in 2020, Dr. Porter received the IAFNR Lifetime Achievement Award. So please, again, I'll put all this stuff in the links about the technology, about how you can get the technology, how it benefits heart health patients. So, Dr. Porter, welcome to the Healthy Heart Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to share this with the world. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, those intros, especially for people like yourself that have, and like myself, it's like the older we get, the more kind of accolades and credentials, which is all good, but it makes for the intro a little bit long, but it really serves to highlight, the difference you're making in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Yes.
Now, listen, inside of your bio, again, we kind of threw around some big terminology like, technology enhanced meditation and brainwave entrainment. Why don't we, kind of break that down for us, if you will. Let's start with brainwave entrainment, and then what does that mean, technology enhanced meditation?
Okay, so brainwave entrainment, if you and I, Jack, were to be on a spaceship heading toward Earth, the Earth would have a resonant frequency between 0.01 and 100. And our brain also has an evoked potential to respond to those frequencies between 0.01 and 100. So our brain literally works as a tuning fork, like a tuning fork would, when we're around an environment, any environment, whether it's the ocean, let's say, when we're around that environment, we start to relax, we feel good. Our brain sends a signal to our gut and says, hey, start making acetylcholine. We start feeling good because that's the brainwave associated with that neurotransmitter. And we're doing that because our brain is entrained naturally. That's why 90% of all people live close to a body of water. It's kind of like a homing pigeon. Our brain knows that, and it feels good when it's around it. It doesn't feel as good the further away we get from water or source of nutrients from that. The other response would be if we went up to a mountaintop and we meditated, like you might see pictures of gurus on the mountaintop. People go, I want to meditate like a guru, but they don't want to go to the mountaintop. Well, that's because the mountaintops are 7.8 hertz frequency. So when you're there, that actually mimics theta, which is a deep brainwave state that actually produces GABA, which is actually a precursor for those that follow neurotransmitter work. And it's a precursor to DMT. Our brain actually creates DMT as a molecule. So for those wondering about like plant-based medicines, we've done a lot with those, but everything is in vibration. We're in sync with everything. So one analogy I like to tell people is some people love to go to the mall during the holidays, during Christmas time and those holidays, but other people, the vibe isn't right for them. They get all nervous, they get upset because our cells every cell actually receives energy, not just from food and water, but also from light, sound, and vibration. We have little cells in each of our batteries called chromophores. And these little energy packets, if you will, actually feed the mitochondria ATP, which is the currency of health and production. That's what has our body recovering and rejuvenating. So as another example of entrainment, we might go to a party and maybe we didn't want to go, but somebody dragged us there. We start having conversations and they start playing music from our childhood. All of a sudden our foot starts tapping, our body starts swinging. We got to dance because our body literally collects energy from that. Now, if they're playing music we don't like, we can get depressed and we want to get out of there, so music is a good source of that. So what we found was we took ancient traditions. If you think of the shaman of the early tribes, you come home from hunting and gathering and you're stressed out, just like people are today. Maybe we're a little worse today than we were then, but in the process, our limbic brain gets locked. Basically the limbic brain is trying to protect us. It's not trying to kill us. Our body isn't turning against us. It basically doesn't know what to do because we've habituated stress in our lives. And I'm not talking about everybody, but most people don't. So when we habituate to this stress cycle, our brain begins to look at everything. There's a saying, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so when people have stress, everything that happens to them tends to be accelerated or exacerbates that stress. So they're using what we teach in reverse instead of it being, we need time for recovery, in other words. So when we're talking about technology-driven meditation, that's how I started. My dad was a chronic alcoholic and he went to get training with a group called the Silva Method, and they had a sound that played in the background of the room. We now know that sound to be isochronic tones, and I know we might talk about that later in the day. But what that does is the limbic brain, or our primitive brain, actually hears that sound. And when it hears that sound, it starts to match that frequency. In the same way, if let's say we had a tuning fork, we had two tuning forks there, we start this one, all of a sudden this one starts moving at the same rate because that's the way the universe works. It's all synchronicity, synchronized. So even our heart, for instance, we have what's called heart coherence, which means when our heart, which has 4,000 neutrino cells, we have a brain in our heart that communicates with this brain in our head. That's why we have something called heart rate variability. If people have, like I'm wearing a BioStrap right now, but you could be wearing a Apple Watch, or you could be wearing all this different technology, and it's telling you, because they now know that if your heart isn't coherent, which means it isn't communicating with the brain, it's not like you're going to die tomorrow, but it's going to tell you that your lifestyle choices are headed in the wrong direction. If you let's say you started a good exercise program, sleeping well at night, drinking plenty of water, eating nutrition, all the things we know that create good health, that heart rate variability will change. And that's all based on the frequency following response, because we're measuring the frequency of the heart and the brain. And are they coherent? Is there communication between them? So that happens at the cellular level. It happens with friends, right? We have people we say, I really vibe with that person, or I don't. So just kind of think of it like we've taken something that used to be like ancient cultures did this all the time. And we said, how can we convert that into modern technology? And that's what we did with BrainTap. That's part of the equation.
Fantastic intro. And, again, for those who are listening to what Dr. Porter just said, the beauty of a podcast like this, or if you're watching it on our YouTube channel or in video format, is that you can repeat and you can listen to what Dr. Porter just said again and again and again, because each sentence was just a little nugget there of truth and of wisdom. And for a lot of people, of course, that don't necessarily speak the language that we're speaking of, right now, it'll take time to unpack that. But I think initially, what you said, really how everything is energy, and how these good energies influence us in a positive way and make us feel good. And like you said, you could be at the mountaintop, like where I live, or you could be at sea level next to the ocean, where so many people live, and experience the positivity of that, but yet also the negativity as we do get into maybe the holiday season. Or, again, I think about this, Patrick, that one of my worst days ever was a day that I went to IKEA to go shopping for office furniture. And I look back, and I'm not someone who experiences, any kind, I've never really felt significant anxiety or stress, but I from the moment I walked into that location, and really ever since, whether maybe it's a crowded grocery store or a mall or some kind of a large sporting event, well, I don't feel right anymore. And, maybe explain that again to me as to why I don't like those experiences, and why so many other people don't as well.
Right. So what's happening there when you're like, I'll use IKEA as an example. They funnel you through their store, and you don't get to look at your own pace, right? People are coming in, depending upon if they're going to get those meatballs or whatever, they're moving through there. And the whole thing is to push you through the store, and you only have one chance to buy. So it's not like walking through a regular department store where you can kind of muse at your own leisure and go back and forth. You can there, but it's almost like a salmon swimming against the stream of people. So that you're feeling, even though we don't consciously feel it, we actually are sharing more than just our thoughts. Like our heart, for instance, they now know that our heart actually broadcasts photic energy. Most people know who Tom Brady is, right? The football player. Our science officer actually developed a piece of fabric that takes ceramics and mirrors. Every person on Earth actually broadcasts out of every cell infrared light. Now, we know as light scientists that light heals. So when you think of somebody who's a healer, when people come near them, they're actually getting bathed in 810 to 860 nanometer light, because that's what the human body emits. So what he did was he took clothing that Tom Brady now calls TB12, and he wears this clothing, and his own body's light heals himself. Okay, that's us personally. Now, when you're in a large group of people, it seems weird, but you're actually sharing photic energy. You're not just sharing your space, you're actually sharing the energy that you're with. And what's really cool is science is now showing that it used to be a kind of a saying, we used to think people were quacky when they said, I'm light. But the reality is science has shown that we are light, that light is the most underprescribed nutrient on Earth. And vibrational medicine is becoming more and more popular, whether it be with music or sound or different tools. There's so many ways that light, sound, and vibration can heal and tune up the body. But when you get in unhealthy spaces, for instance, you walk into IKEA where they're outgassing products that have not been, now it's rushed to market. I don't know about Colorado, but if you were in California, they add 5 pounds of other stuff to your mattress just to make it fire retardant that our body doesn't want, right? Our body doesn't like. We have to, I tell people, if you buy a mattress in California, you got to put it outside for 3 months to let it outgas before you bring it in your house. Now, not everybody's that sensitive. It seems like the cleaner you live, the more sensitive you are. And the dirtier you live, or let's say you just don't care about substances, your body actually, not that it doesn't matter, it just says, okay, we're toxic already. So when you walk into a store like IKEA, there's a lot of toxins in that environment. The lighting they use, I'm sure it's not John Ott light, which is the researcher who showed full spectrum light is important. So you're walking through that store, you're being bombarded. Also, they have a lot of environmental toxins. So that's one of the things we tell people they need to clear out. I personally don't like to go to IKEA just because I like their little meatballs, but I don't like their one thing is I'm not a big one for putting together all my furniture, so my staff doesn't like it because I go there and then they got to put it all together. But it's convenient, but I think we have to pick when we go to places. And there is actually in BrainTap, you could listen to the phobia one, because what happens when you get anxiety or fear. I'm just going to use the 5 senses, but there's more than that going on. But just think in terms of the 5 senses. And when I was growing up, we didn't have fuse boxes like we have today. We actually had fuses, that would blow, and you had to go down there and change those fuses out. Well, now that people have the breaker boxes, but imagine our body, we're seeing something through our eyes, our ears, our body, we're processing all of this data, everything that's going on. Well, when we get into an overwhelmed situation, in psychology, we call it a synesthesia, which means overlapping sensory systems. But when that happens over a long period of time, you can develop something called PTSD. Even though it's a minor thing, going shopping at IKEA, that triggered, like that vibratory frequency I was talking about, it found a frequency when you felt claustrophobic. It might have went back all the way to the time you were going through the birth channel. I mean, they've maybe even before, we've actually seen what we call simple regressions in psychology, where people have remembered a fight between their parents while they were in the womb. And that anxiety and fear carried forward, that they felt they'd never been wanted. They'd never, they weren't needed. So, I mean, we're very complicated, but the simplicity is that if we focus on what we want, the brain will repattern and get rid of all those. I tell people the negative experience that happened in your life, think of them like leftovers. If you and I were at a restaurant, we had leftovers, we put in the refrigerator, it's in a white box stuck in the back of the refrigerator. 3 months later, when we go to dig it out because friends are coming over and something stinks in there, we pull it out. It's green and fuzzy. We don't send it off to CSI to figure out who we were with and see if dad and mom, caused that box to be put in the back of our refrigerator. We just throw it out. So a lot of these memories that no longer serve us, or a lot of these emotional experiences, that's where the positive psychology, what we do with BrainTap comes in, because the brain, we've never been taught how to think. We've only been taught what to think. I mean, there's so much out there that we can learn if we just start putting critical thinking to work, how it works. When you think about our bodies, I mean, I'm sure aliens somewhere are studying Earth and going, these people smoke little cylinders of smoke that when they do it over a long period of time, shorten their life by 10 years, and they think it's cool. I mean, they got to be up there going, I don't understand this. Or, we eat over 100 pounds of sugar a year, and that's probably the most toxic thing for our brain. And they're probably going, wow, we don't get this. We got to study these people. That's crazy, and then they have all these longevity people, like yourself and people like that are showing. And then when you tell people some of this stuff, they go, you're crazy. It can't be true, but basically we have to come up with our own vision of our future and stay focused to it and not get sucked into our past, at least the part of the past that isn't serving us. And it does show up. So what I tell people when that happens, think of it like you're being presented with one of your tests for your superpower. So anytime you're going through a challenge, whether it be claustrophobia or getting up and speaking in public or confronting a friend or whatever it is that's uncomfortable for you, once you handle that uncomfortableness, you kind of get a superpower. It doesn't control you anymore. It doesn't dictate how you think or act or respond, and you become stronger because of it.
This is all, great stuff. And again, everyone who's listening, this is the Healthy Heart Show. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson. I'm interviewing Dr. Patrick Porter of BrainTap.com. And, I mean, obviously, I think, you're clearly displaying how well-rounded you are as far as, listen, it's not just about, brain and brain waves and brain technology that you've invented, but obviously you're bringing in all these other things that come into it. And we kind of keep going back to this IKEA story. And, again, all the, toxins and the light and how we are light, those are all critical thoughts that everybody needs to understand. You're not going to hear this from your medical doctor, right? They'll look at you like you're absolutely insane. They've got no knowledge, no training, no understanding of this, the vast majority of medical doctors. But I do take issue with that meatball because I'm pretty hardcore in my life. As I tell people, I'm wearing organic cotton underwear and we sleep on the organic mattresses. We take this lifestyle to the nth degree. I'm sure you do as well. And you probably don't eat that meatball because it's not free range, grass fed, pesticide free, ethically raised animal meatballs. But that being said, let me say, one thing I love to, talk about certainly is, there's a lot of literature about people who have pets. And how people who have a pet, specifically a dog that's most likely studied, they live longer, they live better. And I think you're right. As we get near that pet, there's a lot of different benefits, but I think one of it is that infrared energy that's emitted from the animal that entrains us, and then our energy, of course, entrains the animal. But then talk about that, and then also talk about what's going on right now during this pandemic, where social isolation is obviously exploded. It is the norm. It is the expected, and the social distancing, and how we are losing that entrainment with other humans.
Right. I'll handle that one first because it's so important. We have a group of children today that are growing up without learning facial cues. Communication is 88% nonverbal. And so a lot of it, when you're talking to somebody, I don't know about you, but when I go to a place that has to use a mask, luckily I live in New Bern, North Carolina, where COVID only happens on television. And not that people don't get it. I'm not saying that, but it's not as rampant as people say. When I do go to another city, like I was just in Orlando and people were wearing masks and they come to the table and ask you questions. I'm like, I can't hear you, like speak to me. Now that's one thing, but prisons, this is how bad isolation is. Prisons have banned isolation. Prisons, listen to that. Prisons have banned isolation because of how bad it is on the mind of the inmate. So what are they doing to us? That is crazy manipulation. When you look at the blue zones, which is kind of a new thing out there about how people live longer and better, blue zones will tell you, and what that means is you're living in a zone of the world where you have certain characteristics. One of the main characteristics of blue zones is community. Connection. We as people crave it. Now, the problem is what they do, they supplemented it with something called social media, which is social manipulation, not social media, because you can't say what you want to say there. It's not like you're on the telephone. You can just tell your friends whatever you want. You can only say what's part of the narrative. If you say anything other than that, they banned you or they say it's false information. So my thing is that we need to act locally. We need to get together as groups. You need to continue that social networking. If you have an elder family member that you haven't seen in a while, they're suffering. You need to go see them. Now, obviously, if you're afraid, if you have a temperature or you're sick, then fine, go do it. But one thing I don't think people know is they actually found 1,500 COVID positive tests. They ran tests on them again. 100% of them were either influenza A or influenza B, every one of them. So, I mean, we're being manipulated for God knows what reason. And we have to stay positive. So, when we think about the mask mandate, or when we think about what's happened over the last year, they are creating terror in the minds of people. When you look at TV and all you see is craziness about the mask, about this, what should have happened is like Sweden. I have a lot of friends over in Sweden. They never shut down their borders. They never required masks. They told the elderly, if you had these comorbidities, don't go outside. It went through the country just like any other virus would, and they went to the other end and there's no problem. Now we're finding out countries like Israel, Spain, and France, 90% of people hospitalized have already been vaccinated. I love this one. There was a person who wrote on social media, I hate the unvaccinated. I'm vaccinated and I got coronavirus from my friend who's been vaccinated. And I went, did she read that before she wrote that? Or is she just, that's how critical thinking works, right? They don't think outside the box. So I think that we need to socialize. You need to have a circle of friends that you can communicate, not just online. I mean, it's great to have 1,000 friends online or whatever, but if you were stuck at a gas station and you didn't have $3 or whatever to fill up, or $30, I should say now, or 60, would you have somebody you could call them up and say, hey, I need some money. I'm out of gas. Would they actually come and help you? Those are the friends we're talking about. Those are the people that you want to spend time with, and you're sharing energy, you're sharing mindset. It's really important that we all get together and find people that are looking in the same direction as far as health and well-being. I'm not a political person, but I'm more of a health minded. I wish we had politicians that were really in it for the political helping America, but it looks to me like there's no good guys. They've all been hoodwinked. They've all been, when you have politicians setting medical standards, you got a problem, and this is the only time in history that I recall, and I've been around for 60 years, that you get diagnosed with something, they give you no opportunity to heal it. They just say, go home for 2 weeks. It's like, there are solutions, but they don't want to tell you about them. So, and then because I went so long, I forgot what the first question was.
Well, no, I mean, and that's, I mean, listen, and I think there are some politicians, and hopefully more, that are coming to the front, and personally, I'm a libertarian. I spoke at an event called Freedom Fest in Las Vegas a few years back in front of 10,000 other libertarians. And it's really just about, getting the government out of our business, but certainly getting them out of our healthcare where they have no role whatsoever. But there are, I met, Congressman Tom Massey, who's a freedom fighter and really is on board with everything that you and I are talking about. Of course, Rand Paul would be the most famous of the politicians who really put health first, and politics and corporatism, way down, the list. But really, I think COVID is just kind of like this, this microcosm of the fundamental problems with health in general, is that there is no focus on building up health. There is no focus on building up real natural immunity. The only discussion has been on isolation and masks and vaccines. It's never been on promoting health and wellness. So let me ask you a question then, quite simply: how can BrainTap support our healthy immune system and to keep us alive and well through no matter what this is? And
Right.
we can even go into kind of what COVID really is. Do we know what it really is? Is it some virus that we catch from sneezing on each other? Is it something else? But first, take me back, again, to how does BrainTap really support the overall health and wellness and the immune system of the body?
Well, first we have to understand that we have three brains. So we have a circulating immune system. It's our gut. Most of our immune system's in our gut. And if you think about somebody who's a paraplegic, their gut still works. So that brain is independent, really. It can work independently of this brain up here. But the brain that runs the show is the heart. That's the brain, because how many people die of a heart attack on Monday morning? You probably have that statistic. So if your heart is not in it, so if you start doing, fear is one of the biggest detractors. If I take somebody who's in pain, who's fearful, stressed out, and has a negative attitude, they are going to have a terrible heart rate variability. Now, what's important about that for the listeners, and they might already know because they listen to your show, but you want to be varied. We all know that person says, I can't believe Frank died of a heart attack. He never got mad at anybody. Well, he should have got mad every once in a while, because he imploded. He didn't express, right? So we need to express, not express on his family, but maybe find a workout facility, eat healthy, work out, do something. We have to move energy. We live in an energy economy. So what BrainTap does is when you put the headset on, you're using light, sound, and vibration. So we do this tuned to the light of our sun. Just to give everyone an idea, every day at 2:00, something happens to every person on earth in your own time zone. Around 2:00, your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees. This is just a fact of nature. That's your body resetting. Now at night, in the middle of the night at 2:00, your body actually raises its temperature 2 degrees. So these are things that happen because we have a body clock. It's not just women that have cycles. Every person, everything has a cycle, of what's going on. So what we're doing with BrainTap is, instead of our minds have changed and evolved in our atmosphere. Our environment. I'm sitting here looking at a computer with lights and all this stuff here. That's very different than the Serengeti 100,000 years ago. But these bodies are still the same. These bodies have a natural propensity to want to reboot in the afternoon. So what do we do as Americans is we go get coffee, tea, or chocolate, some kind of stimulant. So this stimulant is a biological stimulant. And I'm really a big supplement guy, because I don't think you can get it from the foods and things like that. So, my son often said, if people go to your hotel room, they're going to think you're dying of something with all these. But I said, you can't get it from your food, right? So the food is more for the enjoyment and the conversation. You got to supplement to get your nutrients. So in the process of that, but what BrainTap is going to do is it's going to help you to reboot the system, and we're going to cut the time. That's why we just got back from the biohacking conference with Dave Asprey, because they consider us a brain hack. Although I think that I like the term health optimization better, because a lot of people, when I grew up, hacking wasn't good, but it's a cool thing, I guess. So people call it brain hacks. But what we're doing is we're saying you can take 4 hours and take a nap, which is really good, but nobody has that time. So what if we compressed it into 20 minutes? The biggest thing people do wrong, I should say, in their life is they don't ever plan for recovery. Like we know, and I'm just going to take you through the history of what I believe is happening. First wave of wellness, we have to have nutrition. You can't outthink a bad diet. I don't care who you are. So you've got to have the nutrients. You got to find a good doctor, somebody who's going to help you to be in alignment with the health goals. And I'm not talking about sickness care, which is our medical community. I'm talking about wellness care, which we need. Number two, now that happened in 1890 when Dr. Kellogg started his first wellness community in Battle Creek, Michigan, which I happen to live there, so I know the history. So then in 1970s, what happened? Everybody got fixated on physical fitness with like Arnold Schwarzenegger coming over here. So now everyone knows, back in the 70s when I was going to school, if I said I'm going to go work out, you would have said, are you going swimming? You going running? You doing these things? And I would have said, no, I'm going to go lift weights. You'd have said, why would you do that? Back then, they thought lifting weights would make you muscle bound, and it was actually bad for you. Well, we all know now we need muscle for our brain. If we don't have muscle, then we don't have it. But the problem is, after you do these things, there's no recovery time. So what BrainTap does is it's going to accelerate the recovery of the body by bringing light into the body. What light does is it's going to bring in vasodilation, blood flow, and circulation. Now, the reason we use lights in the eyes and the ears is we're working with the brain. Now, lights work everywhere. So if you have lasers or you have LED lights, you can use those on the body and get really good results. I'm just talking about brain fitness now. So what we talk about now, we believe 2020 is the brain fitness, the era of brain fitness. By the end of this century, let's say, people are going to know about their brain, because that's one thing that we've not really focused on since before really 2000. Around 2005, people really started to say, hey, we need to do something about this. It just doesn't take care of itself, and we're really at a pandemic of dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's not just about how we think or our foods. It's a combination. It's a perfect storm of all these things that are happening. But what BrainTap does, it's going to teach you to down-regulate our sympathetic drive. Now, what that means is people get locked into that sympathetic overload, which is the fight or flight. But before that, there's the freeze response. That's the biggest problem we have. If you keep interrupting the natural function of our nervous system, could you imagine trying to get some work done at your desk, but every 3 minutes somebody comes in and interrupts you? Well, that's what's happening with social media. It's happening with our lifestyles, everything that's happening. So BrainTap gives you time to set aside all that. You don't have to do anything. The nicest thing, when I first invented this technology in the 80s, this was before cell phones, CDs, MP3 files, all this. People thought we were from another planet. I mean, they didn't get it because nobody knew the real benefits of meditation. They thought it was something weird people did that sat on a mountaintop with a turban on and chanted. But the reality is that there's another positive physiological benefit, because once you get rid of all that confusion in your mind, all that natural electricity in the body, because our body should be a 0-point electrical field, but most people are running around with 3 volts circulating through their system. This means they're not grounded. They're just so busy. They're just collecting all this electrical energy. And when you meditate, you actually ground all that. So part of it is just getting, some people call it centered. Some people say, I just need to get focused. Well, the problem is then the monkey mind shows up and people think they're supposed to be like the guru. It's kind of like watching Sunday golf and everybody thinks they're going to go golfing and play like Tiger Woods. Well, he spent a lifetime, perfecting Tiger Woods, and he's not even that good anymore. So you have to figure out, you just have to, when Buddha said all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons, that's what's happening mostly in our lives. So what BrainTap does through light, sound, and vibration is teaches the brain without the conscious mind needing to learn anything. You simply press play. Even if you can just use the app. In the app alone, now what we found in a study we did in Australia, because the biggest side effect that people find from BrainTap is better sleep, more energy, greater focus. But we did a study with coal miners. These were people in West Australia where they get up to go to work, it's dark. They get done with work, it's dark. They work in a cave. I mean, obviously their body is really screwed up. First thing we had to do is get them to stop drinking. I didn't realize all these Australians took some alcohol to work. But as soon as we got them cleaned up, we said, hey, just for the next, 6 weeks, if you want to drink in the evening, that's fine. Luckily, once we showed them what it was doing to their brain, they all stopped drinking. Everyone in the study, we had 15 people in the study. We had an 80% improvement of sleep when they started using BrainTap once in the cave and once when they got out of the cave. So twice a day they were using it, and they could optionally use it more than that if they wanted. But the whole idea was, how can we reset the circadian rhythm? Light does that. That's why if you're not in bed before 8 o'clock in the evening, well, I'm sorry, between 8 and 2 o'clock, you don't have to be in bed at 8. But if you don't get to bed between those hours, the body clock doesn't start producing melatonin. And it's not just for the brain. Melatonin is needed for every cell of the body to function correctly. So what BrainTap does is it's going to help to reset that. We've done study after study. I don't want to inundate people with it, but there's, we've had studies with pilots where we shorten their time of recovery from 3 days to 4 hours with neurological function. And the reason that they gave the Lifetime Achievement Award was most of the top neuro guys in the country use BrainTap as their take-home program. So once the doctors do, we can't replace the doctor's work. Obviously, the doctors are doing some very sophisticated work with the brain, tuning it up, getting it ready to go, their physiology, and then what we'll do is we'll work on their psychology a little bit, getting them tuned up, making it more positive, have optimistic thinking. It's all about recovery now. So if we can recover the body, we're all running our own Olympics. Every day we get up, we hit the ground running. At the end of the day, if we're exhausted, if we can't spend time with our loved ones, we don't enjoy our life, pretty soon it's just going to lead to a miserable existence and we're not going to want to be here. So we want to bring energy back into people's lives.
The Healthy Heart Show will be right back after we take this quick break to hear from our sponsor. Would you like to drink great tasting coffee that's also good for your heart health? Cardiology Coffee is your answer. This 5-star rated coffee is delicious. It's a gourmet coffee that begins with whole organic beans, hand-selected and carefully roasted. It's tested and certified to be free of pesticides, mold, and other toxins. Cardiology Coffee is great for your heart and you're going to love how it tastes. Order now online at cardiologycoffee.com. Now back to the Healthy Heart Show.
Yeah, this is fantastic stuff. Dr. Jack Wolfson here. I'm interviewing Dr. Patrick Porter of BrainTap. And, in chapter 5 of my book's called The Paleocardiologist, The Natural Way to Heart Health. It's about, paleo meaning old, and it's about old school nutrition and really old school lifestyle, which again includes, getting to sleep on time. You mentioned, between 8 and p.m. and 2 a.m. Midnight got the name midnight because it's the middle of the night and people should be sleeping like our ancestors did since the dawn of human existence. So to me, like that is the ultimate strategy. And it's nice that again, you talk about your technology on how it could help people that maybe just for, again, like their lives, their existence doesn't allow them to get the sleep shortly after the sundown as which they should. But in my book, in chapter 5, I named that chapter One Nation Under Prozac, where I talk about how anxiety, stress, anger, depression, social isolation all markedly increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. But let me ask you to explain this or tell me what you think, about this idea really is that happy people, truly happy people don't get sick.
Right. Exactly. When we're laughing or smiling, Cousins, his name was, he's the one who did the research about laughter therapy and reversed his cancer. What happens is we possess the most powerful pharmacy on earth. It exists between our ears. It can either create neurochemicals that kill us or neurochemicals that help us thrive and survive. It can dispense 30,000 different chemicals, our own neurophysiology. The problem is people are taking extra, like you said, One Nation Under Prozac. Most people don't realize that all of those drugs were only approved for short-term use. It kind of sounds like the 2-week mandate. These were short-term use, and they were told, every person I've ever talked to, because I've helped a lot of people with their medical doctors get off their drugs, they were told this is only short-term. But the problem is there's something that I call the pill without the skill. Okay, people want the pill, but they don't want to develop the skill. You're taking the pill to help you, if you did use it for only the 3 weeks, which it was, that's the clinical use of it. After 3 to 4 weeks, I'm sorry, if you're taking this medicine, it's not doing anything for you. Literally, the only thing it's doing, it's trapping your brain in a cycle of stress because that pill is only 3% medicine, 97% toxins. And those toxins are designed to dumb you down. It's a lot of aluminum, a lot of other things in that medicine. So if they just gave you most of it is inert, basically to make it look like it's a pill. They're going to put it in. So that's why people, when they try to cut down or they do things, it's not working so well. So what I tell people is, when you start feeling good, you're going to have to get with your doctor, because he's going to take you off that medicine, because your body is either going to produce the right brain chemicals, or you're going to have to keep supplementing. But your body wants to do it for itself. We call it Tai Chi for the mind. So you can't fight force against force. You've got to learn to get into the flow state. And it's sad, because even with autistic children, when we worked with them, as long as they were on the pharmaceutical medicine, their brain would not change. So if you're on pharmaceutical medicine and you're trying to meditate and you're not getting the result, that's because it's designed to keep you from doing that. It's designed to keep you really in we called it the Thorazine shuffle, when they used to give out Thorazine all the time. People just become numb to it all, instead of the real secret to life is to move and breathe. If you're not moving and breathing, even everybody that we work with BrainTap, that's not the only thing you have to do, right? You have to do all these other things. We always tell them, you have to go figure out how you're going to move and breathe. Now, you live in the mountains, so you have great outdoor activities. I love the mountains. If I could live anywhere besides where I'm at now, it would be in the Colorado Rockies, because it's just so beautiful there. And you have great air and things like that. But if somebody is just looking at their life and they're looking at their humdrum, they stay in their home all day, they set, the reason they say sitting is the new smoking is because the physiology actually starts shutting down. Our body is meant to move. And so we always recommend either yoga, Tai Chi, some kind of martial arts, something to move the body and breathe. Swimming is good, or dancing. Some way that you're using your whole body to do. Now, of course, when you're younger, you can play sports, the other things, that baseball or softball, things like that. But you got to get out there and breathe. Our lymphatic system, too, most people don't know, is the garbage man of the system. So a lot of people with their brain, in 2016, they actually discovered, the medical community finally admitted that we had a lymphatic system in our brain, which I thought was very funny, because in physiology class, we were all taught that everywhere there's a blood vessel, there's a lymph vessel. But if you look at the old lymph pictures, it stops here at the neck. It's like, what happened to the brain? So, but they didn't find out about it because they didn't know that it only operates during deep level 4 sleep. So it's kind of like a switch that happens in the brain. When you're talking about sleeping, if you do not get to sleep, really, before 12 o'clock is usually the magic number. If you don't get to sleep by that time, that glial lymphomic system basically stays locked up. So you get leaky brain. And when you talk about leaky gut, that's your immune system. It's going to destroy. You're actually leaking substances out into your body that your immune system doesn't know how to handle. Now, if you have a leaky gut, you have a leaky brain. They know that now. They're directly related. And I'm going to say this too, that you have a heart problem, because if you did the heart rate variability, you're going to find that it's really low, and having more variability is better for those that are wondering. So you want to be able to, and this is something we did with a dementia study we just did with the elderly. And they're not really that old, because I'm older than most of them in the study, but I don't feel, I go along with Wayne Dyer when he said, never let an old person inhabit your body. That's my philosophy. But this group was 55, 65 years old, and they all had dementia. Their medical doctor said, prepare. The next step is full-blown Alzheimer's. That's unfortunately the medical diagnosis for dementia. We can't really do anything. There's no real cure for that. And I'm here to tell you that's wrong. There are many cures for that. And mostly it's a lifestyle disorder, not a brain disorder. So in this lifestyle disorder, what we did is we did BrainTap 3 times a day. At the end of the study, I'm just going to summarize it. They can always go look up the study at braintapresearch.com. But at the end of the study, remember, they were all diagnosed. They did the Cambridge Science testing. They all had dementia. Their brains were terrible. Everything was bad. We put them into the program. All they had to do is get up in the morning and do a 10-minute wake-up session. We found out their brain was not coherent, which meant the frontal lobe, which is our rational thinking, that's the part of the brain we need for cognitive thought. It makes us different than dogs and cats and things like that. And so, but when they're off, these should be matched. So let's say the voltage in both sides should be the same. Every one of them had less voltage in the left hemisphere. So we had to design very specific sessions in our BrainTap protocol for that, which actually speeds up the left hemisphere and slows down the right. It took 6 weeks to balance or match the brain waves. We then did the test again. They no longer run the dementia scale. We sent them back to their doctor to do all the testing. They said, wow, if you'd have came here 6 weeks ago like this, I wouldn't have diagnosed you with dementia, but we've already diagnosed you. So you're marked from that day forward. They're going to be known as but they didn't have the symptoms anymore. But the reality was that our brain works on voltage or energy. So what we showed was a 49% improvement in neuroplasticity in 6 weeks. We also showed that this is the big one, the reorganization score. We all know we have elderly members of our family. They get upset in the morning. They're still upset in the evening, maybe still upset 3 days later because they couldn't shake that negative experience. But if you have that variability we're talking about, you can shake it. So they had a 58% improvement in neural reorganization, which meant the brain could go back to its normal neutral state 58 times faster than it did before the study. So we've also done studies with people who were 100 years old and showed a 27% improvement in neurological function. So I'm here to tell you, any age your brain can improve. Don't listen. I mean, just because they don't have a pill, they're saying we have a diagnosis for it, but we don't have a corresponding pill to give you that will make us feel better, but will not help you. Very few pills I love it when I ask somebody, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm physically fit. And then I do the intake with them. I go, but you're on 17 different pills. Oh yeah, that's why I'm feeling so good. I go, no, that's not why you're feeling so good. You don't even know what you're feeling. You're taking this pill to counteract that pill to counteract that pill. The average person is taking 7 pills when they're 65 years old. I mean, and usually they're being dispensed by 3 or more different physicians. So they don't even know what's going on between them.
Yeah, what you're talking about right now certainly is the real, pandemic. It's the pandemic of pharmaceutical use, and this has been going on obviously since the early 1900s. The Rockefeller, Foundation, the Flexner Report, that really dictated how medical education was going to be in the 20th century and beyond. And so really, it's just the doctors just lost that common sense. And what you're talking about with BrainTap, clearly, like you said, whether it's biohacking or optimization, as we would call it, it's on top of these common sense things about sleep and sunshine and physical activity and finding your happiness, and of course, organic paleo foods. Let me and I actually, when I first heard about leaky gut, which is from my wife, because after all those years of medical training, I never heard about leaky gut. She mentions leaky gut, and as a chiropractor, she would become my wife, and she opened up my eyes to all things health and wellness. But I said, leaky gut, where'd you come up with that bogus diagnosis? Well, of course, I would ask people about it, and over the last 10 years, the literature has exploded on it. Now, of course, we can test for that. And a few years back, I came up with the name, leaky heart syndrome. And like you said, leaky brain, leaky heart, or it's everything leaks. And clearly, in the case of the heart, it's leaky endothelium and things. Again, these inflammatory cells, immune modulators get into the intima, the blood vessels, set up shop, eventually lead to coronary artery disease, plaque rupture, heart attack, death. You name it. But it's about restoring the common sense to the equation. But let me ask you, if you would, because obviously a lot of people are out there listening, and it's like, okay, Dr. Porter mentioned meditation several times. Tell me about BrainTap on how that's. I don't know if I want to say meditation on steroids, but why not just download one of these free meditation apps or go into a quiet room for 5 minutes? I assume there's benefit, but tell me why again, why BrainTap is next level technology.
Yeah. One of the things is we actually, we did a study just recently that I can talk to and people can understand. Hopefully music, everyone knows music relaxes you. It's really good. A lot of people will meditate to music. So we hooked everyone up to our professional HRV and our EEG equipment. And we were measuring the pilot study, which is now a 150-person study in Brazil. But we took 5 minutes, we did the pre-scan, 15 minutes we had them listen to music. And it just as we thought, they down-regulated their sympathetics. They had this parasympathetic response. They're in this great place listening to music. When the music was over, the brain went right back to its normal state of stress. It didn't change at all. 5 minutes later, we took that same piece of music, but we put the BrainTap algorithm into it. At the end of the 15 minutes, They didn't go back up. It stayed right there. The brain began to be trained. So the biggest difference is, and I can say this with all certainty because I've traveled all over the world. I've measured gurus. I've never seen anyone yet, anyone could beat the BrainTap scores. And this is people taking people who are expert meditators to people who were, and we've been published just recently. We've been published twice by the PubMed published 2 of my papers this spring on breathing, because we use our HRV to show that some Kriya breathing, this yogic breathing, because we work with AIMS, Bhopal in India. They're like the MIT of India, and they use our equipment there. And so we're always showing, my passion is to prove out ancient traditions are doing and how we do it with modern technology. So we had to match up. What are they doing? You can do all of these things without the BrainTap. That's for sure. I mean, people have been doing them for thousands of years, not as well, but you can. So I don't want anybody to think, hey, you've got to have the BrainTap. But if you want it fast, if you want it to be done right, and you want to build a master brainwave, the problem most people have when they meditate on their own, and this is something that is the elephant in the room with meditation, is that we find that they create what's called a singular brainwave. We have 5 primary brainwaves that we operate in all the time, from beta, where we're speaking right now, to alpha and theta, which are very creative states, and then delta, which is sleep. But we have a higher order of brainwaves called gamma. And they now are saying gamma has to do with breaking down amyloid plaque, keeping us sane. Healers, every time I scan a healer, they have high degree of gamma rather than the other brainwaves. And we need all of those at all times. It's not one brainwave. So when I talk about a singular brainwave, there's a saying in meditation circles. It says, he's so heavenly proud, he's no earthly good. Because what happens if you meditate and you get into alpha and theta, but you didn't develop your beta or your gamma, then you lose track of reality. You basically check out. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. That's why in India, they say that once you turn 60 years old, you're going to spend a quarter of your life or more in meditation, because they know that, but you already lived your life as far as they're concerned. Now we know we have the potential to live. Some people say 200 years. A lot of other people say 127. But whatever it is, it's a lot more than 70. I'm getting close to that, and I don't feel like I'm ready to go at any time. I live every day as if it's my last, but I plan as if I'm going to live forever. That's kind of the philosophy, and that's a shaman kind of philosophy. And that's kind of the way I think. Is that we got to keep observing and noticing what's going on. And so many people just are willing to give away their freedom of health. We live in the best time in the world. They can tune into your podcast. They can listen to the brightest minds in the world with their cell phones. That's incredible.
Yeah, it truly is. And I think, really, as people, understand that, BrainTap really is turnkey. And obviously not only is it best technology, but it is so simple really to start getting into it. And again, we'll have all that into the show links of what we're talking about here. And I think as much as a lot of listeners that are out there listening, you're studying nutrition, you're studying lifestyle, you study evidence-based supplements, you study all these other things. Now you just got to up your game on BrainTap and really diving into all that the technology has to offer, and therefore reap the benefits. Dr. Porter and I just had an hour discussion and really just scratching the surface of the surface. And I would advise all of you, again, just use the common sense. As Dr. Porter said, the ancient wisdom, bring that forward to the 21st century. And that's how we're going to get to what I would say the 100-year heart, the 127, the 200. Let's not put, let's not put numbers onto our longevity, because I know you and I both believe, Dr. Porter, that, really, we are limitless. And that's what we will need to focus on going forward. I'll let you have maybe, any final thoughts for the listeners on the Healthy Heart Show.
Well, the main thing is to realize you take time to tune in, turn on, and use the innate power that you have within you. If it's not BrainTap, do something. You got to do something to get rid of the stress, focus on the health, and really just focus on the health. Don't worry about the other stuff. It falls away. If you focus on the positive, the negatives will not be given energy and they'll die on the vine. So stay positive. We're going to get through this. And I believe we're going to come out better on the other end. This is just another test that humanity is going through. So, I'm the eternal optimist though. So that's the way I live my life.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, we'll have all the links to how you can get BrainTap technology. Or we'll do a lot more on this as well. We'll do some more blogs. We'll do some videos to make sure everybody gets a good understanding. We've got a fantastic team of health coaches also at Natural Heart Doctor who can help guide you on this journey as well. With BrainTap and of course everything else we do. So again, Dr. Patrick Porter, thank you so much at BrainTap.com. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson. This is the Healthy Heart Show. We are Natural Heart Doctor, and we wish you the best and the 100-year heart and beyond. Be well.
Thank you.
That does it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Healthy Heart Show. Please help us get the word out by liking and subscribing to our podcast and our Facebook page, Natural Heart Doctor. Please show support for our podcast sponsor, Cardiology Coffee, your resource for organic, antioxidant-rich, mold and pesticide-free coffee shipped straight to your door. Learn more by adding @cardiologycoffee on Instagram and visiting cardiologycoffee.com. This podcast provides materials for information and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. We encourage you to contact your physician for any of the health issues discussed here.